So my name is Bastien. I am actually a neuroscientist and one of the co-founders of In&Sight. And in today's webinar, I would like to talk to you about how we could actually build a trustworthy and a collaborative science and together flourish from it. So I will start today by introducing probably one of the biggest problems we have in science today, which is about the access to the scientific literature. And then I will focus on the file drawer effect, and then I will take a few more minutes to present you what was at first an idea and has now become a publishing platform that aims to make science accessible and as open as possible, what we call In&Sight. And obviously, at the end, there would be some time to discuss together, and I would be happy to answer some of the questions that you might have concerning In&Sight or also concerning the first part of this webinar. So I would like to start with the following questions: what researchers actually do and what researchers need. So I think that we all doing science, and scientists are making science because they are actually seeking knowledge. They are trying to understand the world that actually surrounds them, and they are experimentally trying to answer scientific questions. But to properly answer those questions, we actually need as scientists access to the literature. We need to have access to the studies that are performed by other researchers. And that's where actually the problems are arising. Well, we actually have two major problems there. The first problem is that actually 50% of the literature is actually blocked behind paywalls. However, the solution to that problem has been already found, and we will talk about that just after. The second problem is that actually there is a tremendous number of experiments, of studies, which are not published in scientific journals. And we will talk about that as well, just in the next few slides. But if we go back first to the first problem, which is that 50% of the literature is blocked behind paywalls, I'm sure that while looking for an article, you probably all of you already encountered this nice message that is asking you to pay to get access to an article. But I don't know if you have noticed, but we have less and less these problems. And this is because of, or thanks to, the open access license, which ensures that some scientific articles are accessible for free. So this is not a new license, because it was actually first used by computer scientists in the 70s, and then it has been again used by physicists in the 90s, and then it has truly expanded to other research fields. And we can now clearly see the evolution and the growth of open access journals and articles by looking at this graph that has been proposed by Paywalls and colleagues in 2018. And well, we can see that we have really a rapid growth of open access articles in the last 2 decades. And we can even see that open access is actually now becoming the norm. In fact, one of the benefits of publishing an article in open access is that it somehow becomes available to the entire world. And so you're reaching the largest audience possible. And so in this way, you increase your discoverability. And in fact, articles that are published in open access are actually more cited, 18% more actually than the other articles. And so if you're still wondering whether you should publish in open access, that's a very good number to remember. So now I would like to move on to the second problem, which I believe has remained relatively unhandled, and that is most of the experiments are not published in scientific journals. They actually remain, yes, it's not a question, Cyril, it's someone entering, right?
Yes, it's
Okay.
someone entering.
Okay, so I was saying that one of the biggest problems we have right now is that most of the experiments are not published, and they are ending up in the researchers' drawers, what we call as well the dark science. But what we actually would like to know is which studies actually go into the research drawers, how many studies end up there, what are the consequences and the causes of the file drawer effect, and those are the questions that we will try to answer in the next slides. So the file drawer effect, well, has been initially described in a paper by Rosenthal in 1979, and Rosenthal believed and also estimated that researchers' drawers were filled with 95% of non-significant results, what we can call null findings or negative results, for example, and that the literature, the current literature in contrast, was composed only of 5% of null findings. Well, this was said in 1979, and in fact, Rosenthal was not really far from the truth, because in 2019, Allen and Meller estimated the percentage of null findings in the current literature. That's the little dot that you can see at the bottom of this graph. And as you can see, they found out that the current literature, the traditional literature, contains from 5 to 20% of null findings. And what's very, very interesting to notice as well is the percentage of null findings in registered reports. So when the hypothesis and the methods are written and published um, before the data is actually acquired, before the experiment is actually run. And in this case, we can see that the percentage of null findings increases and can even reach up to 70, 75, really close even sometimes to 80. And so this suggests us that a lot of null findings are actually missing in the traditional literature. But how many actually are missing? Well, we can try to get a rough estimation. So we know, for example, that in the traditional literature, as I just told you, that it contains around 10%. Okay, this is an average. And so this corresponds actually to 300,000 of articles with null findings, which are published in scientific journals every year. But if we consider also Allen and Meller's estimation, we still have 50% of missing studies that are supposedly containing null findings. This means that actually we have more than a million of studies, 1.5 actually million of studies with null findings which are not published every year. And that's quite problematic because it creates a misleading view of the scientific facts and of the scientific reality. So yes, it seems that the researchers' drawers are filled with studies which are containing null findings, but not all findings, not all null findings are actually similar. We can categorize them into conclusive or inconclusive findings. So by conclusive findings, I mean findings which provide a clear evidence of an absence of an effect, while actually inconclusive, they do not. Okay, in this case, we can still hope that there is something going on in the data. And for example, we can think of studies with a low sample size that may lack some statistical power to make very strong and conclusive claims. That's often the case, for example, in ethology, in my research field, when we have studies with very, very low sample size and very few animals. And so in the drawers, we do not find, I believe, not only null findings, but we also find other kinds of studies. For example, we can find failures, or what we call also flawed designs, and also we can find replications which are not really published a lot. And so as for, in fact, null findings, flawed designs and replications, they strongly suffer from publication biases as well. They often get rejected while they are submitted to journals, and while in fact it would be very beneficial to discuss them and potentially learn from each other's mistakes, I believe. So contrary to the null findings, it's quite hard to know exactly how many flow designs and replications are truly rejected by journals. But for flow design, for example, it is very likely that they're rejected after peer review. And this actually represents 39% of what is submitted to journals in the first place. So that's quite a lot of studies at the end. And so the AG team has actually tried to evaluate how much time it represents to review articles that are not going to be published, and actually found that it represents 15 millions of hours of reviewing those articles every year. So I think that this shows truly the importance of the peer review process, but at the same time that the way that peer review is done is imperfect, as we lose a lot of information, a lot of scientific discussion here, because the peer review reports are not published. Okay, so we have a lot of studies that are not published, but who is actually responsible for that? Well, I think that there is not only one person or one category to blame, but an entire system, an entire ecosystems. For example, we have publishers and scientific journals which chose novelty at the expense of reliability. Journals which actually suffer from strong publication biases. But researchers, I believe, are truly responsible too. In fact, when we obtain null findings as researchers, most of the time we don't even write up the report. We put this aside and in the drawers, and then we move on to the next experiment. Well, to close the loop, I think that institutions as well and funding agencies are responsible for the file drawer effect, because they have evaluated researchers on the wrong metrics for years, for decades, and they have evaluated researchers on the quantity rather on the quality for decades. And I think that all of these factors, journals, researchers, and institutions, all participated in making the file drawer effect a long-standing issue in science. But hopefully, things are actually changing. And they are now publishers and scientific journals such as our initiative, for example, in In&Sight, we chose to focus on reliability rather than on novelty, and are really trying to promote real scientific discussion and constructive critique of the science. There are as well researchers, probably as you, if you register to this webinar, we are willing to change their publishing practice and are trying to report all of their findings independently of their direction. And I believe that now there are every day more institutions which are changing the way that they're evaluating researchers and are now not taking the impact factor anymore to cite it, but are more rather focusing on open science metrics. And that's, I think, a very good beginning. And so what would be then the benefits of publishing all of the file drawer studies? I think that overall, if we manage to address this issue and we manage to discuss all of those studies that remains in our drawers in a proper manner, we could build a really a trustworthy literature. We could identify dead ends very faster than ever and start discussing them with the scientific community to find solution, which in return, I'm sure will lead to an increase of scientific reproducibility and collaboration. Finally, I think that it will save a lot of resources. Well, that's even sure. Funds, that's for sure, but most importantly, time. And I think that when we do research, we're always running after time. So if we can save a bit of it, that would be just amazing. And so a few years ago, we had the idea that a platform was actually needed to get rid of the file drawer effect to publish all of the studies located in the drawers. And so we also noticed at the same time that the entire publishing system required some changes, and therefore we decided to create all-in-one platforms where you can publish without publication bias all of your results, and where you can write, submit, publish, read, and review articles in different disciplines and in full transparency. And so that's what we tried to do with In&Sight. And we decided, therefore, to change a bit the standard publishing process that you might find in other journals. So, for example, we first created an online editors that allow you to write your article online and then submit it automatically in our journal. Once you submitted your work, for example, then we will run pre-publication checks. And so at this stage, we will verify the author's identity, we will run plagiarism test, and we will do some editing work, actually quite a lot of editing work at this stage. And then open acceptance, we will attribute a DOI to your article so that it can get cited quite easily, and most importantly, so that it can get found in search engine. And then we release the article in open access. And well, at this stage, the article is actually awaiting peer review. And at this stage, when the article is published, we are going to start to have the open peer review and the post-open peer review process that is going to take place. And we were going to have experts. We're going to be able to review the articles, and we will publish as well the reports and the response to the reviewers alongside the article. So that's a very, very important point to us. And so now I'd like to show you some of the things that we have developed and some of the things that we are still developing. So I was telling you that we have developed an online editor, and so here it is. You can see it just there. And what's very interesting with it is that together with our editorial line, you can structure your article the way that you want in a very, very easy manner. And more than that, it allows you to load different kind of media, and I can show you that just here. So for example, here we can just add simply a figure into the text, but you not necessarily need to add figures. You can add other kinds of media such as video. You can add the code. So for example, if you want to be fully transparent and show how you did your statistical analysis, you can potentially already share your code there. And in the futures, we are thinking even of adding the possibility to add some interactive graphs, some 3D models, so that you can share exactly what you want. Since we are as well scientists, adding media is cool, but we also need to add references and cite colleagues. And so we decided to also implement this citation tool where you can just copy paste the DOI of the articles that you want to cite. And in this way, you can get the citation pretty easily. And then it's incorporated really easily into the text of your articles like this. And so what's very, I believe, very interesting with these online editors is that then it allows us and help us to create an enhanced reading experience where you have access to multiple kinds of media and you have access to the data in full transparency and all that for free because all of the articles are actually published in open access, as I just told you before. And the peer review reports, as I also told you before, they will be also accessible there. And as we know that it is a very heavy process, we are as well building an open peer review interface, which will help researchers in evaluating the articles which are publishing on the platform. So here on the left, for example, you can see an example of an article that is under peer review. And on the right, you can see a reviewer that is wrapping up his review before submitting it. And you can see that he can actually shape it as he wants. And in the future, we will also implement some new things like highlighting the text, comments on the text, and things like this, so that we can really make this publishing, this open peer review process really smooth, and so that we all win time and we can all benefit from this really important process in science. So those are some of the features that we've been working on until now, and that most of them are actually already available on the platform. So if you want, you can just create an account and try it for free. And so now the true important question is, do you actually have research in your drawers so that you would like to publish and share with the community, with the scientific community? Well, I'd like to thank you for your attention. And I'm also very delighted to let you know that we have released our two first articles in our life science journals in Invertebrates. So I can only invite you to go on our website, in&Sight.science, and read them. And also I would like to tell you that we are also going to be releasing new journals soon in different disciplines, in chemistry, physics, and potentially in mathematics as well. And so if you are from those fields, we will be happy to learn more and to discuss about that. And so I will leave you on this nice videos and this nice tweet by Oda Delekavi, which is always illustrating very well some research situation.